The galaxy had seen many conquerors, but none like them. The aliens arrived without warning, their ships darkening the skies of every world they approached. They were relentless, cold, and efficient. Entire civilizations fell within hours. No army, no force of nature could stand in their way. Across countless planets, races cowered before the might of the invaders, submitting to their superior technology, their overwhelming power, and their unyielding will. The galaxy's greatest empires crumbled like sandcastles before the tide. But there was one species that didn't cower, one species that didn't bow, one species that refused to surrender, no matter the odds. Humans. While entire worlds quaked in fear, watching their cities burn, their governments fall, and their people perish, the humans stood their ground. With a defiance that struck at the heart of the invaders, humanity refused to accept their fate. They didn't flee, didn't beg for mercy. They fought back. It wasn't just the humans' ability to fight that made them a threat. It was their resolve, their determination, and their refusal to be broken. Where the other species crumbled under pressure, humans adapted, learned, and pushed forward. They understood the value of unity, of community, and of willpower. And they were willing to do whatever it took to protect their homes, their families, and their future. The invaders, accustomed to subjugating entire species with ease, were unprepared for the human spirit. They thought they would encounter the same fear and surrender they had everywhere else. But what they found on Earth was something entirely different. Something they hadn't anticipated. A species willing to fight until the very last breath. They couldn't break them. They couldn't defeat them. The humans had seen it all before. They'd faced their own struggles, their own battles, and emerged stronger every time. When the alien fleet descended upon Earth, many believed it was the end. That this was the final chapter in the long history of humanity. But what they didn't know, what the invaders didn't know, was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries. The time to fight back had come, and the human spirit would prove to be a force more powerful than any weapon the aliens could wield. The first encounter was brief, but devastating. The invaders, thinking they could crush any resistance with ease, were met with a resistance they had never seen before. Humans fought with a ferocity that surprised even their own leaders. It wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming their home, their dignity, and their place in the universe. The battles raged on, and despite the overwhelming odds, the humans didn't falter. As the war escalated, the humans realized that their biggest strength wasn't in the advanced technology they had developed, though it helped. It wasn't even in their military prowess, though that played a critical role. No, the true strength of humanity lay in their unity. When faced with extinction, when faced with an enemy so powerful that it seemed unbeatable, the humans did not splinter or fracture. They came together, stronger than ever, and turned their planet into a fortress. The invaders underestimated the power of hope, the power of determination. Where others had fallen, the humans rose. Where others had surrendered, the humans stood tall. Every world they had conquered became a battleground. Every defeat was met with renewed vigor, and every attempt at subjugation was met with a resistance that only grew stronger. As the invaders continued to push forward, humanity adapted, evolving at an extraordinary pace. They harnessed new technologies, forged alliances with species they once considered rivals, and united in the face of a common enemy. The battle for Earth wasn't just about defending a planet, it was about defending the very essence of humanity itself. And as the war raged on, it became clear that this would not be a simple conquest. This would be a war like no other. But even as the tides began to turn, the invaders still believed they could win. They believed their superior technology and unmatched power would eventually break humanity's spirit. They couldn't have been more wrong. They couldn't have predicted the humans' ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight with an intensity that no other species had ever displayed. It was only a matter of time before the humans launched their final strike, the strike that would change everything. It was a strike, not just against the invaders, but against the very notion that any species could impose their will upon another. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be enslaved. Humanity would not be subjugated. Humanity would fight for its freedom, no matter the cost. But just as the humans prepared for their ultimate victory, a shocking discovery was made. Something even more terrifying than the invaders had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for its moment to strike. And that revelation would change the course of the war and the fate of the galaxy forever. The humans had thought they were fighting for survival. They thought they were fighting to reclaim their planet, to protect their people. But what they didn't know was that their struggle was part of something much larger. Something that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. As the final battle loomed on the horizon, humanity's fate hung in the balance. The alien invaders had underestimated them, but would they do the same with the new threat that was about to emerge? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: humanity had proved that, no matter the odds, no matter the enemy, they would never cower in fear. The battle for Earth was only the beginning, and what came next would define the future of the entire galaxy. The humans had no idea what they were truly up against. The invasion had come so suddenly, so completely, that it was hard for anyone to comprehend the sheer scale of it all. The aliens had arrived with a ferocity that left no time for preparation. Their ships, massive and imposing, had blocked out the sun, casting an eerie shadow over the earth. Cities that had once been bustling hubs of life were now nothing more than rubble, the air thick with dust and the stench of destruction. The invaders wasted no time, striking quickly, dismantling Earth's defenses with terrifying precision. They had already conquered so many worlds, and Earth was just one more planet to add to their empire. Or so they thought. At first, the people of Earth had been paralyzed with fear. There had been no warning, no signs. One moment, life had been normal businesses open, people going about their daily lives, and the next, their world was turned upside down. Communication systems were jammed. Military forces were overwhelmed. Entire governments fell apart. People who had once lived in peace suddenly found themselves in the grip of terror, with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, humans refused to be cowed. They had seen hardship before, fought wars that spanned centuries, and faced their own extinction multiple times throughout history. They knew what it meant to survive. They knew what it meant to fight. And now, in their darkest hour, those qualities would be tested like never before. Despite their initial shock, small pockets of resistance began to form. It was in these moments that humanity's true strength began to emerge. While other species might have surrendered, humanity dug in its heels. The first few skirmishes were brutal, with humans outmatched and outgunned by the alien invaders. But in the heat of battle, something remarkable began to happen. The humans adapted. They quickly learned how to fight the aliens on their terms, using guerrilla tactics and exploiting every weakness they could find. It wasn't about matching the alien technology or firepower, it was about outsmarting them. In underground bunkers and makeshift command centers, military leaders and strategists gathered to plan the next phase. They knew they couldn't win the war just by fighting the aliens on the surface. They needed to find a way to take the fight to the invaders, to challenge their hold over Earth in ways they had never anticipated. It was then that a chilling realization dawned on them. The invaders had underestimated humanity. They saw Earth as a primitive planet, its inhabitants incapable of fighting back, much less winning a war. The rebellion grew, not just in strength, but in ingenuity. Humans, with their relentless drive to survive and innovate, began turning the tide. They repurposed alien technology, studying it carefully and reverse engineering it to suit their needs. Every broken city, every shattered building became a battleground for learning and adapting. The invaders, initially so confident in their superiority, began to face unexpected challenges. They couldn't anticipate the speed at which humanity was evolving. But even as humans began to make progress, a deeper, darker mystery began to unfold. The alien forces had left clues, cryptic symbols, and strange artifacts scattered across the planet. These weren't just signs of their invasion, they were pieces of something much larger. Something far more dangerous than the invaders themselves. Humanity's experts scrambled to decipher these strange messages, knowing that every discovery could be the key to victory. But with each passing day, the urgency grew. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. The aliens weren't just trying to conquer Earth, they were trying to unlock something, to awaken something that had been buried for millennia. It wasn't just Earth that was in danger. The entire galaxy was on the brink of destruction. The aliens had been collecting artifacts from countless worlds, searching for a way to control something far beyond their understanding. They were hunting for an ancient power, a force that could bend the very fabric of reality. A power that, if unleashed, could annihilate entire star system. And it was hidden on Earth. Humanity, at that moment, realized that the fight for Earth was no longer just about saving their planet. It was about stopping the aliens from gaining access to a weapon that could erase everything they had worked for, fought for, and built. And they had to act fast. The clock was ticking. The rebel forces had made tremendous strides, but they were still vastly outnumbered, their resources stretched thin. Yet, even with all of the odds against them, there was one thing the humans had that the invaders did not hope. The rebellion had become more than just a military movement. It had become a symbol of resistance, a beacon of humanity's undying will to survive. But this wasn't just a war anymore. It was a race against time. The aliens were on the verge of unlocking the secrets they had been searching for, and the humans had no idea what would happen if they succeeded. Would they be able to stop them in time? Or was humanity's fate already sealed? As the rebels prepared for their most daring mission yet, the stakes were higher than ever. They had to infiltrate the alien stronghold, break through the defenses, and reach the ancient power before the invaders did. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only chance they had. They would have to rely on everything they had learned over the past months, every scrap of knowledge, every stolen weapon, every ounce of courage. But as they made their final preparations, another shocking twist came to light. The alien invaders, it turned out, had been planning something far more insidious than anyone could have guessed. It wasn't just the power they were after. It was something else. Something that no one, not even the humans, had been prepared for. As the rebels prepared to launch their final assault, They had no idea what awaited them. Would they be able to stop the invaders in time? Or would the galaxy and Earth fall under the control of an unstoppable power? The battle for humanity's future was far from over, and the true test of their resilience was only just beginning. The humans had shown they could fight back, but now they had to face the most terrifying challenge of all. The atmosphere in the rebel camp was electric with tension. The countdown to the final assault had begun, and with each passing second, the weight of the mission pressed down harder on the shoulders of every fighter. Despite the victories they had achieved, the humans knew that they were facing something far greater than they had ever encountered before. The alien forces had always been ruthless, but this time the stakes were higher than ever. It wasn't just their planet at risk, it was their entire existence. If the aliens succeeded in unlocking the ancient power hidden beneath the surface of Earth, it would be the end of everything. The galaxy would fall under their rule, and humanity would be wiped from the stars. The rebels knew their only chance of stopping the invaders lay in infiltrating the heart of the alien stronghold. The stronghold, a towering fortress made of an unearthly material, seemed impenetrable. The walls shimmered with a strange energy, and the air was thick with the presence of the alien forces. Every inch of the facility was guarded by armed soldiers, alien technology, and advanced security systems that humans could barely comprehend. And yet, despite all the odds, the rebels had managed to devise a plan. The leader of the rebellion, a former military strategist who had proven himself time and time again in battle, stood at the front of the command table, surveying the final details of their plan. The rebel forces had divided into smaller groups, each assigned a specific task. One group would break through the outer defenses, another would disable the alien communications network, while the third would make its way directly to the heart of the stronghold. Their objective was clear: find the artifact before the aliens did, and prevent the unleashing of the ancient power that threatened to obliterate everything. But even with a plan in place, uncertainty lingered. The humans had no idea what they were walking into. They had been studying alien schematics, analyzing enemy movements, and preparing for months. But the truth was, they had no real understanding of what awaited them inside the fortress. All they had was hope, determination, and the belief that they could still fight back. As the first wave of rebels made their way toward the stronghold, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Every step forward felt like a step into the unknown, the air growing colder and more oppressive as they drew closer to their goal. The alien forces knew they were coming, and they were ready. The ground vibrated beneath their feet as energy pulses lit up the night sky. The rebels pushed forward, adrenaline pumping, each of them knowing that this mission could be their last. Yet there was no hesitation, no fear in their eyes. They were determined to see this through, no matter the cost. But even as the rebels closed in on their objective, something shifted. The alien forces, usually so disciplined, began to act erratically. The rebels could hear the faint sounds of chaos echoing through the stronghold's walls, alien voices shouting, alarms blaring, and the unmistakable thrum of powerful energy weapons charging. It was clear something had gone terribly wrong. The invaders were no longer just trying to prevent the humans from infiltrating their base. They were preparing for something far more catastrophic. The tension in the air grew thicker, the weight of the moment crushing down on the rebels. In the heart of the stronghold, the alien leader stood before the pulsing energy core that held the ancient power. The artifact, which had been hidden for centuries, was now within their grasp. The alien leader's eyes gleamed with anticipation. For so long, They had been searching for this moment, the moment when their empire would become unstoppable, when they would command a force so great that nothing could stand in their way. But as they approached the artifact, something strange happened. The power within it began to stir. The walls of the stronghold trembled, and the air became thick with an electric charge. The leader paused, unsure of what was happening. They had thought they understood the artifact, but this was something different. Something beyond their control. Back outside, the rebels continued their advance. They were close now, too close to turn back. As they breached the outer gates and fought their way into the heart of the fortress, their hearts raced. The final obstacle was the last stretch, a narrow corridor leading directly to the chamber where the artifact lay. It was guarded by the most elite of the alien forces, their weapons trained and ready. But the humans pressed on, knowing they couldn't stop now. Every step brought them closer to the truth. And then, without warning, the ground beneath them shifted. The corridor they were in began to twist and contort, as though the very structure of the stronghold was alive. The rebels scrambled to stay on their feet, trying to maintain their footing as the walls seemed to close in around them. It was clear that the alien leader was playing his final card. The ancient power had been activated, and its influence was spreading throughout the stronghold, warping the very fabric of reality. As the rebels fought through the disorienting environment, they realized they were running out of time. The energy pulses from the artifact were growing stronger, resonating with a terrifying intensity. The leader of the rebellion, who had been silent up until this point, turned to his comrades, his face etched with determination. They were so close now. They had come too far to fail. But then, a scream shattered the tense silence. One of the rebel soldiers had fallen, their body writhing in agony as they were caught in the powerful gravitational pull of the artifact's energy. The soldiers tried to drag their comrade to safety, but the pull was too strong. With one final, anguished cry, the soldier was pulled into the center of the chamber, their body disintegrating in the energy field. The rebel forces stood at the threshold of the chamber, their hearts pounding in their chests. They could see the alien leader, standing before the artifact, the energy swirling around them like a tempest. It was a race against time now. The fate of Earth, the fate of the galaxy, rested in their hands. The general stepped forward, their voice cold but resolute. "We have to stop him. Now." And as they rushed toward the alien leader, their final words echoed in the silence, a chilling reminder of what was at stake. There's no turning back now. As the general led the charge, the walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with a life of their own, reacting to their every step. The once unyielding silence was now filled with the growing hum of the artifact, the sound vibrating deep within their bones. It was clear the energy was not only affecting the environment but also bending the very laws of nature around them. The air was thick, heavy with power, and each breath felt like a struggle. The rebel forces pressed forward, their weapons raised, determined to stop the alien leader before it was too late. But as they neared the center of the chamber, the scene before them seemed to shift in a disorienting blur. The alien leader, once standing motionless, now twisted unnaturally, its form flickering in and out of reality. The power from the artifact was no longer just surrounding them. It was engulfing the alien leader, merging with it, and changing its very nature. Then, as if in response to their approach, the alien leader let out a blood-curdling roar that reverberated through the chamber. The rebels froze, momentarily stunned by the sheer force of the sound. It wasn't just the voice of the alien leader, they could feel it in their minds, a force that seemed to reach into their very thoughts. The air around them crackled with electricity, and the temperature began to drop sharply. Suddenly, the alien leader's body surged forward, not in a single movement, but in a series of jerking, unnatural shifts. Its eyes, once cold and calculating, were now wide with something almost desperate. The rebel soldiers hesitated for a moment, unsure of what they were facing. Was this the true power of the artifact? Had it turned their enemy into something even more dangerous? The general's mind raced. They had planned for a direct confrontation, but this was something else entirely. The alien leader had always been ruthless, but it was now operating beyond their expectations, tapping into an otherworldly power that threatened to consume them all. In the midst of this chaos, the general made a split-second decision. They signaled for their team to fall back, realizing that they were no longer dealing with just an alien leader. They were facing a force far more destructive than they had ever anticipated. The rebels scrambled to regroup, retreating just as the alien leader launched itself forward in a burst of pure energy. The shockwave from the leader's movement threw the rebels to the ground. The general barely managed to maintain their footing, feeling the rush of power like a physical blow. The alien leader hovered above the ground, its body writhing and contorting, now a hybrid of flesh and pure energy. The general's heart pounded in their chest, and they realized with a chilling certainty that they were no longer fighting just for Earth's survival. They were fighting to preserve the very fabric of reality itself. But then, as the general tried to take control of the situation, something unexpected happened. The artifact's energy flared brightly, and the alien leader's form froze. For a moment, time itself seemed to stand still. The general's eyes narrowed as they recognized the shift. The artifact's power had reached its peak, and now it was in control. Her crackling voice filled the chamber, its source impossible to determine. It was the voice of the artifact, cold, ancient, and alien. "You seek to destroy what you cannot understand," it intoned, its tone laced with disdain. "You will never control this power. It is the true ruler of this universe, and it has chosen its new form. You are nothing more than an interruption." The words sent a shiver down the general's spine. They had known they were dealing with something powerful, but this was beyond their comprehension. The artifact wasn't merely an object of power, it was sentient. It had its own will, its own purpose, and it was not on their side. Before the general could react, the air shifted again, and a burst of blinding light filled the chamber. For a moment, everything went white, and then, as if the universe itself had been torn open, the rebels were thrown into a new world. They found themselves no longer standing in the alien stronghold, but on a barren, lifeless landscape. The once magnificent walls of the fortress had disappeared, replaced by an empty, desolate horizon. The alien leader was nowhere to be seen, but the artifact pulsed ominously in the distance, its energy radiating outward like a beacon. The rebels were disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. Had the artifact transported them somewhere else? Were they still on Earth? The general's mind raced, trying to make sense of their new reality. They could feel the weight of the power surrounding them, an oppressive presence that threatened to crush their spirit. It was clear they had entered another realm, a place beyond their understanding. The general stood tall, squaring their shoulders as they turned to their comrades. "Stay focused," they said, their voice steady despite the uncertainty. "We don't know where we are, but we do know one thing. The artifact is still our enemy. We have to stop it, no matter what." But just as they began to strategize, the ground beneath them began to shift. The earth trembled, and the sky above them darkened as a shadow descended. Something was coming, something massive. The rebels looked up, their hearts sinking as they saw it. An enormous, towering figure, its shape flickering in and out of focus, moving toward them with terrifying speed. It was the alien leader, but it was no longer the creature they had fought earlier. It was something far more formidable, more menacing, something that had been forged by the power of the artifact. The general's pulse quickened, and they could feel the desperation rising within them. There was no time to waste. The stakes had escalated beyond anything they could have imagined. The true nature of the artifact, the alien leader's transformation, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for existence itself. And the general knew that in this new reality, where nothing made sense and every step could be their last, the only thing they could rely on was the unyielding strength of humanity's will to survive. The rebels took their positions, ready to face whatever horrors this new world would throw at them. Their bodies were tired, their spirits battered, but they weren't ready to give up. Not yet. The alien leader's massive form loomed before them, its glowing eyes piercing the air like burning coals. Its body flickered with the same energy that had once filled the alien stronghold, now twisted and corrupted beyond recognition. It was no longer simply an enemy, an invader. It was something ancient, something that had fused with the artifact's unimaginable power, becoming a creature beyond all understanding. The general felt their heart race as they watched the towering figure, the ground beneath them shaking with every movement. The air was thick with the artifact's energy, and every step the alien leader took seemed to warp reality itself. The rebels were scattered, struggling to regain their bearings, but the general stood firm, eyes locked on the towering foe before them. "We have to stop it," the general whispered, more to themselves than to their comrades. There was no question in their mind. This was it, the final stand. If they didn't act now, humanity would be lost, consumed by a force they could never hope to understand or defeat. The alien leader raised one arm, and the ground itself split open with a deafening crack. Dark energy surged from the rift, swirling around them like a vortex. It was as if the universe itself was bending under the alien's will, and for a moment, it seemed impossible to hold on. But then, something shifted. A sense of clarity filled the general's mind. They didn't have to understand the alien's power to defeat it. They just needed to outlast it. Humans had survived against impossible odds for centuries. Against overwhelming forces. Against the very fabric of space and time itself. And now, it was humanity's will that would carry them through. The general gripped their weapon, their eyes narrowing. "Get into formation," they shouted. "We fight back." The rebels scrambled to regroup, their fear turned into resolve. Despite the aliens' overwhelming presence, they weren't ready to back down. They had seen what humanity was capable of. They had fought against impossible odds before, and they could do it again. With a unified cry, the rebels charged forward, weapons raised high, determined to strike at the heart of the alien leader's power. The general led the charge, their gaze never wavering, their resolve never faltering. As they closed the distance, the alien leader raised its hand, summoning a violent surge of energy. The ground exploded beneath them, sending rebels flying in every direction. The general's heart pounded, but they didn't stop. They had no choice but to press on. If they faltered now, everything would be lost. But then, something unexpected happened. The energy from the alien leader faltered. The ground trembled once more, but this time it wasn't from the alien's power, it was from the artifact itself. The pulse of energy that had been surging from the artifact began to slow, flicker, and then a wave of confusion rippled through the rebels. Was the alien leader weakening? Or was this some trick, some illusion? The general didn't hesitate. They charged forward, cutting through the chaos, their every step bringing them closer to the alien leader. The artifact's power had been the source of the leader's strength, but now it seemed to be faltering. They couldn't waste this opportunity. In one swift motion, the general leapt toward the alien leader, their weapon raised high. With a fierce cry, they struck, aiming for the heart of the creature's glowing chest. The weapon connected with a loud, resonant crack, sending a shockwave through the chamber. For a moment, the alien leader seemed to shimmer, as if its form was flickering in and out of existence. Its body twisted and writhed, unable to maintain its shape under the assault. But just as it appeared to crumble, the unexpected twist came. A low, almost imperceptible hum echoed through the chamber, followed by a sudden, terrifying realization. The artifact, the source of the leader's power, was not destroyed. It had merely been shifting. The light around them grew blinding, and the alien leader's body began to distort once more, fusing back together with even greater strength. The general's heart sank. The alien leader wasn't defeated. The battle was far from over. But then the truth began to unravel. A voice, cold and echoing, filled the chamber once again. This time, it wasn't the alien leader speaking. It was the artifact itself. "You cannot defeat me," the voice intoned, reverberating in their minds. "I am beyond your comprehension. Your strength is irrelevant. Your will means nothing. I am the power of the universe itself." The general's grip tightened around their weapon, but there was no anger in their heart, no fear. Just one thought: survival. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and time again, they had fought against the odds. They had survived against greater powers, greater threats. And now they were here, standing on the precipice of the end. This would be no different. The general looked toward the rebels, their comrades, standing firm despite the odds. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for everything humanity had built. For freedom. For a future. And with that thought, something shifted. The general's hand released the weapon's trigger. They weren't going to fight the alien leader with force. They were going to fight with something far stronger. Cunning. The general turned their gaze toward the artifact, the heart of the alien power. There was no strength that could overcome it, no weapon that could destroy it. But there was one thing the general had learned throughout their life. One thing that had defined humanity's survival throughout history. Outsmarting their enemies. The general knew that the key to victory lay in understanding the artifact itself, not just as a weapon, but as a force of nature. If they could exploit its one weakness, its arrogance, perhaps they could turn the tide. Without hesitation, the general reached into the very core of their mind, tapping into the knowledge they had gathered throughout their long journey. The alien leader's power was an illusion, a manifestation of the artifact's will. And it wasn't invincible. They had to find a way to break the connection between the two. In one final, desperate act, the general focused their mind and used everything they had learned. With an effort that felt like tearing their very soul apart, they broke the artifact's link to the alien leader. And as they did, the power began to collapse. The glowing form of the alien leader flickered one last time, and then it was gone. The chamber fell silent. The rebels stared in disbelief. The alien leader, the artifact, the energy that had once filled the air, they were all gone. The ground beneath their feet stopped shaking, and the oppressive force that had threatened to crush them was lifted. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was no more fighting. There was only silence. But even as the rebels began to process their victory, the general couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the battle was only the beginning. What they had just witnessed, what they had just defeated, it wasn't just an enemy. It was a force that would never truly be gone. The general turned toward their comrades, their face grim. "This is over for now," they said. "But it's not the end. There's always more to fight for." And with that, humanity's victory was sealed, but the war for survival, the fight for the future, would continue. As they walked away from the wreckage, the general's mind lingered on one final thought. There would always be something new to face, something unexpected, something worth fighting for. And as long as humanity remained, they would fight, no matter the cost. The silence that followed was as heavy as it was profound. The battle had ceased. The alien leader's towering figure evaporated, and the artifact, the source of its terrifying power, had fallen into nothingness. For a moment, the rebels stood still, processing what had just transpired. The weight of their victory hung in the air like a thick fog, impossible to ignore but difficult to fully comprehend. The general stood at the center of it all, their breath heavy but steady. They knew, deep down, that humanity had just taken one giant step forward in the war for their survival. But as the dust settled, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. The victory was too clean, too perfect. Turning to their team, the general saw the same uncertain expressions mirrored on their comrades' faces. Everyone had played their part, but there was something in the air that made it clear this wasn't truly over. The fight against the unknown alien empire had only just begun, and though they had won this battle, they knew better than to assume they had reached the end of their journey. "We did it," one of the rebels spoke, their voice hoarse with exhaustion, but tinged with disbelief. The general nodded but didn't respond immediately. Instead, they took a slow, deliberate step forward, their mind racing. It wasn't just the victory that bothered them. It was the knowledge that something far greater still loomed, something more insidious. This victory had been monumental, but the rebellion was far from finished. The general had learned a painful lesson in the last few minutes. Never underestimate the enemy. Not just the alien leader, but the force behind it all. The artifact itself, and whatever had driven the Empire to conquer the stars. They weren't dealing with a race of invaders. They were dealing with an ancient, far-reaching force that no one truly understood, and that terrified the general more than anything else. One of the rebels, an experienced strategist, approached, wiping the sweat from their brow. "We've disabled their primary weapon, but what now?" they asked quietly, the weight of the situation evident in their eyes. The general turned toward them, meeting their gaze with resolve. "Now, we gather what remains. We salvage what we can from this battlefield, and we take the fight to them. But first," the general's voice trailed off, eyes glancing back at the shattered remnants of the alien stronghold. There was a strange hum, still echoing in the air, a soft vibration that wasn't from the artifact. It was the same feeling they had experienced when the alien leader first appeared, a subtle, dissonant presence that clung to the very fabric of reality itself. "What is that?" one of the rebels asked, drawing their weapon instinctively. The general held up a hand, signaling for calm. "Something's not right." As the group gathered together, a sudden realization struck the general like a bolt of lightning. The energy they had just defeated the aliens' power wasn't truly gone. It was displaced. That was the only way to explain the strange vibration in the air. The energy had found a new home, a new vessel. The alien leader had been defeated, yes, but its power wasn't tied to one being. It had always been a part of something greater, and that something greater was still out there, waiting. Before the general could share their thoughts with the team, a loud crack echoed from the far side of the chamber. The ground shifted violently beneath their feet, and the walls around them groaned in protest, as though they were being pulled into another dimension. The rebels staggered, caught off guard, but the general's instincts kicked in. They knew better than to assume victory just because the alien leader had fallen. "We need to get out of here now," the general ordered, their voice sharp. But it was too late. A massive rift appeared in the air, pulsing with raw, chaotic energy, twisting the very fabric of reality. A shadow moved within it, dark and formless, growing larger with each passing second. The rebels looked to the general, eyes wide in panic. This can't be happening," one muttered. But the general had already taken their first step toward the rift. This was no longer about survival. This was about understanding, about stopping whatever had triggered this disturbance before it consumed everything. "Stay together," the general shouted, their voice cutting through the chaos. "We don't know what this is, but we will face it. Together." They stepped closer to the rift, their mind focused. They had no answers, only questions, but the only way to stop this madness was to confront it head on. The general could feel the pulse of energy growing stronger as they approached the rift's edge, the air thickening with an overwhelming pressure. Then it happened. The shadow within the rift solidified, becoming a figure unlike any the rebels had ever seen. Tall, with features that seemed to shift and bend with the flow of the energy around it. It was not alien, not human. It was something ancient, something from beyond. The rebel soldiers instinctively raised their weapons, but the general motioned for them to hold their fire. "Who are you?" the general demanded, their voice cutting through the tension. The figure didn't respond in words. Instead, it raised its hand, and the very air seemed to warp around them. The rebels staggered, feeling as though they were being pulled apart from the inside. The general's breath caught in their chest. This wasn't just another enemy. They were facing the very embodiment of the alien empire's power, something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. And in that instant, the general knew the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The alien empire had been hiding something much darker, something much older than anyone had realized. The artifact wasn't just a weapon, it was a doorway. And now, the true fight for humanity's survival was about to begin. The general turned to their team, determination flashing in their eyes. "Hold your ground. No matter what happens, we fight. We fight for everything." As the rift widened and the figure stepped forward, the rebels braced themselves. The real battle was about to start, and this time, there would be no turning back.